Hey, careful. There's another pilot in the room here. Yeah. All right, good afternoon and welcome to the Recreational Facilities Advisory Board for the 9th of March. We'll start with disclosure of pecuniary items. Does anybody have any interest to declare? Ian?
I have none.
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 None here.
And none. Okay, I'm sorry I missed the last meeting. It seemed to be a good spirited discussion, and I think some of it may have revolved around our terms of reference and trying to figure out a little more specific specificity with respect to our leadership and advice to County Council. So maybe we can try and clarify that today. We'll ask, are there any are there any changes proposed to the agenda? Anyone? Okay. We'll look and see. Did you want to make a proposal on the agenda, Ian?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Under the terms of reference, can we insert that on after section D on discussion items as an option?
Under section 7D?
Yeah, following 7D.
Terms?
Well, I'm part of that. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, we'll pass that. Any other changes to the agenda? Okay, very good. Under presentations and deputations, we will review the county slideshow in a second here. We do have Councillor Van Passen in the audience to go through the Langton meeting slideshow on facts and myths and see if we can provide some clarifications for that. Before that, though, there's no other presentations in the audience, so we'll move on to the approval of the meeting minutes from 3 February. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes as published? Gord, seconded by Ian, and all in favor? Passed. Okay. The next item on the agenda is communications. Sue, do you have any communications that update that you want to pass along?
One point that is there's an open letter to the residents of Norfolk that's been put up on the website and posted on with Norfolk 98.9 and the Simcoe Reformer and going into the Maple Leaf. Just updating residents on our information, the facts that are out there about the RFAB and what we've done in the past. And with speaking with Matt Terry, we've talked about pushing the positive news stories that we have to showcase why the Norfolk Community Center is a necessity in Norfolk County. That's
okay.
it.
In addition to that, I know the Mayor's Office received a letter from the Simcoe County Chamber of Commerce reiterating their strong support for the commitment to promote greater business investment interest, regional awareness, and tourism opportunities, and their support for the development of the multipurpose facility, brackets, hub, in the town of Simcoe. So we received that February 27th, 2020. Sue?
And just for news, I've also had a community group approach asking for information and wanting to discuss uses for different facilities, and I said we would get back to them after our discussion and meeting today. Okay.
Additionally, some members of the RFAB had a good meeting last week with our provincial MPP, Mr. Toby Barrett. And I won't read the entire letter, but he does appreciate the hard work of the Recreational Facilities Advisory Board, and that's good. We're looking to make sure that we clarify our position with respect to community engagement. That's probably the biggest outcome of that meeting. So we have to make sure that we're engaging our community, and our community is all of Norfolk, not just Simcoe, with respect to this hub. So we do have to make sure that we are engaging our community. And that's a great segue into the county slideshow from the Langton meeting held, 19 days ago or so? I think it was the 20th of February. I'd like to invite Amy to introduce Councillor Chris Van Passen, who will be presenting.
Perfect. Yeah, through the chair, I think that Councillor Van Passen will be able to do this slide deck a little more justice than I can. He's the budget chair for Norfolk County Council. He was very heavily involved in the budget, the finances leading up to budget, so he has a bit more background information, but he was also with us at the Langton event and answered a lot of questions to the crowd, so I think that he'll be able to give a thorough overview. So Councillor Van Passen.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I see it's all printed in the agenda, so I will just look at this one. We don't need to flip through the slide deck, or is... Okay. Does it work? I've never seen it work when we were up here, so... But I think, yeah, the budget we did bring in an outside financial consultant to look at all the books, and I guess the fresh pair of eyes, they noticed a lot of different accounting practices going on in different ways, and so they started from scratch and cleaned it up and found a few places where there was little gaps in our accounting systems. The increase, yeah, a bit more of a long-term plan that you can't do budgets 1 year at a time. You sort of build 1 year to the next. So we've got that in place. And yeah, all the departments went through every budget line by line to look at the situation. And then we talked about the $100 million question. That's, why are we missing $100 million? They did a comparison to our neighboring counties and sort of looked at the amount of cash we've got sitting in a bank compared to the amount of debt. Haldimand County has a net position of $79 million. Oxford County has a net position of $112 million, and Norfolk is a negative $19.8 million. And we're going like, why are we doing so poorly compared to the rest of our neighbors? And so we looked at different reasons. Is it because we have all brand new infrastructure? No, that's not the answer. Is it due to high economic growth? Is it because we've got better services than everyone else? They've got a chart there with the different buildings that we have that, they need work on it. So it's not that we have everything brand new. Is it higher economic growth? Well, we're comparable to the other communities. We compared the construction activity is a little below average for the southwestern Ontario. Population growth is a little bit below average. Household income is a little below average. So we want to know why there is a difference, and we can't sort of find that reason. That it's not because of improved infrastructure. It's not because of higher economic growth, because sometimes when you have that rapid rate of economic growth, you got to front end a bunch of services to allow your businesses to move in here, and that's not happening. The better services, that's a pretty hard one to answer. You can't answer that one with numbers, so we'll leave that one up in the air. So that was sort of the first part of that presentation was this: we have a problem. We don't want to go trying to blame anybody. We just want to fix it. So moving forward, we have to make some changes. We have to change direction. We can't carry on doing it the way it has been done in the past. So our soon-to-be CAO went through a little bit of the facts and fiction that council is acting without a plan. You know, the fact is that recommendations came from all the staff, from all the different departments, and we're looking for ways to reverse that negative trend. The fiction number 2 was that there are significant budget cuts. Well, that's not true. This is the largest budget we've ever had. It's actually increased by over 12%. And those targeted reductions that we're in the process of looking at only amounts to about a 2% savings down the road once they're fully implemented. So, you know, we're spending more and getting less. One of the points brought up all the time in the public was that the cuts are focused on heritage and recreation. And again, the facts are that every department, we've cut back where we could on every department, try to get savings everywhere we can. There's no area. I thought we did a good job. We've ticked off the entire county, so that tells me we've done a good job of spreading out the pain. So, the fiction that council has already decided which community centers they want to close, and you know that's the farthest from the truth. That the intent was always to go out and do the town hall meetings and get some input. We want to look whether there is the option of a different process to run some of our facilities rather than doing it the way we have been doing, and we'll look at all the options available and we'll make that decision down the road. But you know, it's not like we had padlocks on the doors the day after the budget was done. So your RFAB's favorite section about the facts and fiction of the hub. Fiction number 1, that the hub impacts non-Simcoe arenas. Well, the hub, my understanding was always to replace Simcoe's facilities in Simcoe with one central facility rather than having them spread out with the old inefficient buildings that need a lot of work. And if we could replace new with, or replace the old ones with new for the same dollars that we expect to spend on repairs, that sounded like a decent plan. So. Yeah, one of the other facts that the hub type concept is exactly what the province is looking for the current round of funding they have available, and that without the upper tier funding, it's not going to happen. So, the healthcare, well, you can read through that. You know. The cuts we did make through the health unit was to sort of not top up the cutbacks from the provincial funding, and the areas that we looked at were non-mandated programs that are available through other organizations, and we were able to shift most of the staff due to a couple of vacancies from retirements and such, that we were able to shift most of the staff around, so we didn't really lose real people. We eliminated a couple of full-time equivalent positions. So, the fact and fiction about that the Norfolk County can borrow more money. Yes, there is a legal limit on the amount we can borrow that we are under, but in practical limits, whatever you borrow, you got to pay back, and you got to have a realistic plan on how to do that. And we are just about at that practical limit. Moving forward, yeah, the plan in that change in direction is to develop a request for proposals to put out in the communities to see if there are different options, different groups, look at different ways of running some of the current facilities, whether that's arenas, community centers, and we will go through that process and we will see where it leads us. But there is no preset condition on any of it. Nobody's made up their minds on anything, so we will carry on with that process, and it'll lead us to where we hopefully need to be, which is a different place than we have been in the past. And the longer term sacrifice it will take some time to right the ship. You know, we've been going in the wrong direction for way too many years, and our budget chief does not have a magic wand that just makes it all beautiful in 1 year, and it's going to take some time. So the debt levels will probably go a little bit deeper before they start getting better, but it is part of that long-term plan, and at least we have a plan, and we will do our best to get there. So, and I'm sure Councilor Martin can add a little bit to that for what I've missed.
Amy?
That was perfect. I did make a couple of notes there. You touched on a lot of it, but if I could just dive in a little bit deeper on some of them. You know, when we discussed how we actually ended up in this financial position, Jason Burgess, our new CAO, he said, you know, we're not looking to place blame, but there were a lot of little decisions that happened over time again and again and again. And so that's why this big picture is so important to take now. That financial position, our net financial position we find ourselves in, minus 19.8 million, is including our legacy fund money that we have in the fund. So we've heard time and time again, take the money from the legacy fund and build a new hub through that. And you could only imagine, add, you know, subtract another 60 some odd million from our 19.8. One really important point for me, it's not about passing the buck, but I think it matters because council is not all knowing. Council doesn't know the ins and outs of every department and how this corporation runs. So when these changes and suggestions come up and potential cuts come up to council, they do come from staff. And so to look at the closure of a museum or the closure of an administration building or the closure of an arena, no, it's not fun, and no one wants to suggest that, and no one wants council to adopt that, and council doesn't want to be the one to decide on that, but these come from the staff that work and run those operations and know those financials better than we do. One common thing that I don't think we've spent a lot of time talking on is, you know, Councillor Van Passen mentioned that the budget will is actually increased, and we haven't spent a lot of time talking about why. And Mr. Burgess will frequently say that we're right-sizing the budget. Quite frequently, in each individual department, they weren't ever budgeted for appropriately, and so they would come in considerably over or considerably under. They would overstate the revenues and understate expenditures, and so they were never right at the end of the year. And then funding would come out of reserves or from another budget or interdepartmental charges to try and even out each and every year. So why did our budget increase, but we didn't offer more services and we didn't put new buildings up? It increased because we're doing proper accounting now. It increased because we've right-sized it and we're accounting for what was actually happening in each and every single department. And then lastly, through the RFP process, this slide at the end here, where we will look to opportunities to partner with the public. We've only done one community meeting, and we will continue to do those meetings. But in that meeting, we learned a lot from that West End community that came together. And one of the things we learned was a couple of the user groups came up to the microphone and said, put the user fees up. And council, we all kind of looked at each other and thought, you know, it sounds really simple, and why didn't we think about it? Well, we didn't think about it because we've had a deputation 2 budget years in a row from community members, from user groups, from service clubs saying you've got to reduce the user fees. But we weren't looking at closing arenas and facilities before. So now that we are, I think the community's coming together. They're giving us suggestions that we are now reconsidering and giving consideration to, and I think that's a positive. So that was certainly one of the suggestions that made a lot of sense to us when we were in the Langton community. But otherwise, job well done.
Well, thank you very much. Amy, before we, I'm sorry, Chris, you can go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, since Amy touched on it, the legacy fund, again, the facts, the net reserves other than the legacy fund that Norfolk County has is a negative number. Like, I don't know how you can say that I have a piggy bank at home, but it's got a mortgage inside of it, not rather than a few coins. And I would go as far as to suggest that if we ever spent any money out of that legacy fund, it would affect our credit rating considerably. I think that's one of the things that's holding our credit rating stable. So if you start spending that money and then on your debt have to pay a higher rate of interest, there's really no net gain to that. It probably loses you. So, any thought of using that big block of money to pay for something, people should probably get that out of their minds and deal with the reality where we are, and we got to pay for it with real money. So.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome Ryan and Bill to the meeting. Thank you very much for making it in. I'm sure there's a good reason you're late. We won't get into that. I would like to jump back to the hub slide for a second, if we could. I'll just throw out a couple more facts that this is a very hub-centric forum, and I will throw out a couple more things that are fact with hubs. Fact number one, I think that's very important for all of Norfolk to understand, is that the return on investment of a community hub is both economic and social. There's a large social return on investment. Quebec study indicates like a nearly 40% reduction in welfare over the 10 years before and the 10 years after a hub was built. Similarly, unemployment dropped in the 20% range. So there's some very, very good reasons to have a hub right there. Another fact is that Norfolk's median age is higher than Haldimand, higher than Oxford, and 20% higher than the entire country median age. Okay? Our median is somewhere in the 47.5 range. That's the median age of a Norfolk County resident. All right? That means we're an old community, and we have to figure out ways of reversing this trend, because clearly nothing is going to get cheaper than it is right now, and getting older means less people available for a workforce. Less people available for a workforce is less attractive to local industry. So if we want industry to come here, if we want to have businesses open, we have to have a workforce, and we have to figure out a way to become attractive compared to our surrounding communities. And we are older than them. We have to figure out a way to reduce that age. And the hub is one of the key ways to reduce that, attract families, bring people in. So those are a couple of clear facts that are very hub-centric, and I hope we can talk to that the next time that we have the community engagement. But thanks a lot for bringing that and putting that out on the public record. Is there any more comments on the county slideshow? Very good. Architect project manager update. Amy, can you speak to this? I know it'll be very quick.
No changes since the last meeting, which was to hold steady on that and not put any additional funding to it, as we were, the last discussion happened prior to budget. So no changes.
Thank you. The application process update. Bill, can I throw you on the spot?
Sure, thanks, Chairman. As far as the application process, if I'm understanding the question, we haven't heard anything back from the Tabis, and I'm not sure if hearing nothing is good news or bad news. I have talked to a few other municipalities are in the same boat. Lots of funding coming out from the senior governments right now. Some of the funds seem to close sooner than later, so I'm not worried that we haven't heard anything, but there's nothing we can really push along. I mean, we could email folks, but we're in the same boat. A lot of folks that applied for these applications are just sitting back hearing nothing at this point.
Right, and I will just add to that, our local MPP, Mr. Barrett, said information submitted through the intake lies in confidence with the Ministry of Infrastructure, not with local MPPs. So again, we're waiting on the Ministry of Infrastructure in Ontario to come up with an answer on that. Anybody have anything to add? Very good. Okay, we don't have any presentations from other possible community partners to deal with today. So we're up to Ian's suggestion on the terms of reference amendment. And I think, Ian, you've sent something around already, have you? Have you passed it around, or are you going to pass it?
No, I am about to.
Okay, very good.
Chair.
See you, Chris. Ian, would you like to speak to this draft notice of motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In response to our last meeting, the discussion came about in respect to our limitations based on the current mandate that the committee has. So it was suggested that we go back and look at how we can expand the mandate to better involve and provide our support, input, expertise, whatever you want to call it, with county staff, et cetera. So I took the opportunity to draft up some wording here. I've got a notice of motion. I'm going back to my old days, so disregard that for the time being. The important thing here is that the existing terms of reference for the committee does provide a review, a minimum once every 2 years. So we're legitimately able to have council at least look at that, and hopefully they will. So what I've done here, the preamble, as the whereas, is that just basically gives the availability to actually seek an amendment to the current terms of reference. And if you wish, I can just go through and highlight them very briefly in terms of that. So the first one basically is to give the expanded mandate by further engaging the existing recreational facility matters exclusive of those areas and directions already approved in the county's 2020 operating and capital budget. So we didn't really want to get involved with what you've already agreed to. So the second part is that, and I think this is an important one, is to establish a liaison working committee comprised of our membership and the key senior staff. I think all of our public members feel that it's been a gap all the way through this process so far, that we meet every month, but there's very little, if any, dialogue or involvement between the staff and us. And it's really hard to really come and make progress when you're only dealing with once a month without involving the people who are directly involved, be it the council and, of course, staff. So that's, and then, of course, it alludes, obviously, to the hub and any changes in the scope of work that may be impacted because of whatever comes out of the federal, provincial application. And the second last one is intended to undertake to engage the public recreational user groups to collaboratively develop a viable option for long-term needs and uses of facilities whose future framework has not already been approved by council in the 2020 operating and capital budgets. So again, it allows some flexibility there, again, to provide some input to your staff and others if we flesh out the many concerns that are being raised. And that the last one being an attempt to establish a recreational user group to develop a more comprehensive communication plan going forward. In other words, engagement, a more involved engagement process. Now, this is simply a draft, and our own public members have looked at this briefly and made some suggestions, but we leave it entirely up to council to consider this. Now, as a notice of motion, one of the councilors on our committee could certainly take it to council as a notice of motion. You don't have to, then you can, got another month or so, I guess, to review it in terms of the process or bring it forward. So it could be Amy, for example, or any other member here if you wanted to. But really, this is just a suggestion in terms of what could be potentially helpful to this whole process going forward. And I think our members are certainly prepared, at least the public members are certainly prepared to commit themselves to that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Take any questions. Mr. Chairman, if I may, it's not, I don't think it's essential that the members here make a decision today because they may want to think through the implications of these, of the particular wording here. You may want to modify it or whatever. But I think the intent is that we get on with the opportunity to further assist beyond what we've already been doing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't see any harm in advancing it today to council because it'll come in a package to council. Anyways, we would review our package prior to sitting down for a meeting. I did send an email to staff to maybe get the full terms of reference sent in anyways just to compare. So hopefully that'll maybe come through the door in a minute here. But I think like at large, if the group is feeling handcuffed in some way, shape, or form, then we're doing a disservice to having you all gathered here today. Like I think that you should feel supported and you should feel prepared to push forward any particular mandate that you're working on, and maybe it's as simple as just setting some type of meeting prior to RFAB with Bill and his team and to keep those going. I don't think that the terms of reference as they were printed need to remain the same forever and always. This was a brand new group that was created, and so we're going to grow and evolve. So I think that revisiting this is fine, and I think it's timely actually because we do have appointments online. Is that correct, Owen? Appointments online right now for renewal of roles in this group, and it might even be nice to see some kind of rollover or overlap where someone else can join the committee. And there's a lot of historic knowledge that's gone around this table that we are all very, very familiar with, but should someone choose to leave and someone else choose to join, what would that look like and how would we get them caught up to speed and so on and so forth. So I think there might be a room to even look at the roles and the renewal of those roles and include that in the terms of reference as well. And in a prior conversation with JJ, I think really council can benefit a lot from leaning on this group as a crutch to reach out to the community. Council is highly politicized, and especially coming out of a budget, people aren't always keen to communicate with us. They might be angry with some of the decisions we've made, but you guys are sitting here, you're volunteering your time, you come from all ends of the county and all walks of life, so you're an asset to have, and I think if we can change things up to further support you, we're lucky to have your help. So I see no harm in advancing this. It won't come to council for a little while anyways.
Ryan, you had a comment?
Thank you, Chair Anderson. I was going to make a statement, but now I'm actually just going to echo much of what Councillor Martin said. Seeing as how all you guys put into this committee and advisory board, if you guys are feeling handcuffed and this is going to help unshackle some of those cuffs, I mean, I see no problem advancing this today either, so certainly go ahead and do that.
JJ?
I was going to say, I'll make a motion to move that.
Good, then we can start the
forward.
discussion.
And the other thing is, just a couple of comments. You know, the presentation that we just saw that county had put together, that's a great presentation. And I think there's a lot of messages in that presentation that are worth repeating over and over and over again. And I know that council and the mayor can't go out to every place in Norfolk repeatedly doing that, but maybe we can help pass that along. And the other thing is, I think some of the sections of the changes that we're recommending to our terms of reference, especially the second section, that a liaison working committee comprised of RFAB members and key county staff be established, and it goes on. And it says, including the Old Norfolk Community Center and any potential changes of the scope of work required by the pending outcome of the county's provincial/federal funding application. And I think that's a really good point. What happens if the province and the feds come back and say, hey, we can't give you all the money that you're looking for, but maybe we can fund a portion of that? And so there would be some, quick decisions or decision making that needs to happen, and I think we can help to make that happen. The other thing I have is just a question, because the membership application process is posted on the website. Do we all have to reapply again? Yes. And is there a deadline for that?
The posted deadline at the moment was March 13th for the rest of the committees. RFAB was kind of the exception to that, as we didn't know where the committee was going. So applications are open and they'll remain open.
I guess the proper thing to do is to get a motion on the floor so we can discuss this some more. Okay. So we have a motion to forward this to council as a draft notice of motion. So now we can open some discussion, and I'd like to commence that discussion by saying that our original terms of reference were amended the 26th of February 2019. And specifically, it says the RFAB will provide leadership and advice to County Council with respect to the development of a multi-use recreational facility. And I think this draft notice of motion really lends a certain amount of specificity to that leadership and advice to County Council direction. So I think in terms of our mandate, this doesn't necessarily expand our mandates as much as provides a certain amount of specificity and allows us to be able to situate what the All Norfolk Community Center is in terms of the broader Norfolk Community Services offerings. And with that in mind, I think it's a very timely motion. And I open the floor. Gord, you had your hand up earlier.
Just going to comment that I think that this would really allow council some greater flexibility as well as this committee just to clarify this direction. Following the last RFAB meeting, I received many calls from people who previously I hadn't talked to that found my phone number to discuss matters relating to the hub and matters relating to the recent budget. And clearly, we can talk about these two items in different silos. We can talk about it as a hub application separate from changes to recreational facilities coming out of the budget. But that is not how it's being received by the public. And so the perception is kind of overriding the reality with regards to these financial dynamics and what is causing what. To the extent that there is that anxiety in the public, I think that greater engagement through the county and RFAB could be used for this with those user groups could really benefit the conversation. Also, and Councillor Martin alluded to in the Langton meeting, and unfortunately I couldn't be there at a conflicting board meeting, members of the public were coming forward and making suggestions such as, what about user fees, increase this? Well, in addition to those comments, many items were brought to my attention with regards to possible alternative solutions or going forward what we could do to find better ways forward as a community with regards to our recreational facilities. There's a lot of those voices. And I think part of the anxiety comes from how quickly this information of these changes through the budget came at the public and from a communication and engagement perspective, the public wasn't satisfied and surprised. And moving forward, to the extent that we can further engage and listen and come up with community solutions that the public is more satisfied with in terms of not just the solutions, but the manner in which we get there, I think will be better served. And served not only in terms of current recreational facilities, but in terms of the understanding and buy-in with regards to the vision of the hub. So I believe that at this time, moving forward in this direction with this motion is important and may allow council that outlet to say, okay, I'm sure you have a lot of groups coming with different ideas and different views, et cetera, and where does that go? Where's the platform for that discussion so that these ideas can all be fleshed out a little bit and then recommendations come? And I think this might provide that platform for that incubation of discussion. So for that reason, I'm encouraged by it, and I hope we go in this direction.
I also would support it too, because I think by gathering the community and hearing their voices again, because we've done that in the past, back about 4 or 5 years ago, we have different circumstances now, and if we re-engage the community, it will be a positive outcome. Not outcome, but positive to hear their voices as all of us together as a team approach with the councillors, with the staff, and ourselves as well.
Amy.
Maybe Owen or Mr. Cridlin can just make a note and I can assist with it as well. But when we get our dates set for the rest of those community meetings, I think all of our RFAB should be patched in. If they can join us, great. If there's maybe one additional slide put into this presentation that our RFAB would like to endorse to share with the public, something a little more specific for them to work on, I think that that's a great start. And then as we finish those meetings off, if additional conversations need to be had with bringing all of the hockey user groups together and all of the service club groups together, then we can definitely move forward with that. But I think the first step would be to have you all join us as we pack up and hit the road again and have the budget discussion.
Well, I think that's a great suggestion, and I'm sure you'll get RFAB participation in the future. One of the things that comes to my mind immediately, the criticism with respect to having grouping them into a single silo is, if you have a car and it's only going to last 2 years, whether you spend any money on it or no money on it, and you're going to spend $23,000 to keep it running, and you could buy a new car for $23,000 that would last you 10 years, would you not go ahead and buy a new car? And when it comes down to the facilities, we're looking at either maintaining the current facilities for 20 years for $23 million, or getting new facilities that might last us 70, 80, 90 years for that same $23 million of Norfolk taxpayer money. So I think in terms of that, it makes good sense. It's a long-term investment, and I think that would be the thing that I would talk to at these community engagement meetings. But Gord, go ahead.
Just with regards to the budget town halls, if I can call them that, from all the touch points I had with different people, I would say that there wasn't much dispute or questioning of the budget numbers. It was taken as fact that we're in this situation as it's been revealed by the county, and so here we are. There wasn't any second guessing of that. The concern with regards to, okay, if we, Norfolk County, had to save some money in different places, the manner in which those decisions were come by, and the community engagement in getting there and coming up with possible alternatives to arrive at the same budgetary position, but with perhaps a different platform in terms of the role of the current recreational facilities. So I would just put that forward to those of us that hope to attend the future town halls, and those that would be presenting, isn't so much what has happened, maybe a little bit the manner of how it's happened, but how do we move forward with community engagement. The actual budget position seems to be well received in terms of accepted that we are where we are.
It would be great to see these meetings as a think tank, kind of, so that we're all engaged together, coming up with solutions together that are feasible too.
Any comments before we vote on the motion to send the draft notice of motion up? Very good. All in favor? The ayes have it. Motion carried. Let's move on. Requirements Working Group update. Have you got some slides to
Well,
talk about?
we had the slides in our last meeting package,
Okay.
and everybody was good with it then. I just, quick question to everybody here, if you've had a chance to review them again, and you do have any concerns, questions, comments about additional information or changes in information that you'd like to see in those slides, please forward those through. And the other item under Requirements Working Group was discussion regarding the possibility of an energy subgroup. And it was suggested at our last meeting that maybe we take that to the Norfolk County Energy Conservation Committee, which I did last Friday morning, and it was received very well, that idea. The Energy Committee is, fully behind anything that they can do in terms of helping to plan infrastructure with energy conservation in mind, and so that was left with the committee, food for thought for future, and for future engagement with that committee. They would be happy to form that energy subgroup and work along with us to make sure that everything in the way of energy conservation or efficiencies is built into new infrastructure like this.
Very good. We'll move on. This item was left from the last agenda meeting at the suggestion of the previous chair. 2020 levy support budget outcomes. Do we have anything to discuss here? Okay, we'll move on. Repurposing of existing facilities. I have some raised eyebrows to Bill just to see if we've moved forward with anything on this. I missed last meeting, so please forgive me if you have to repeat yourself.
I don't believe I was at the last meeting either, Chairman, so I think as far as this, a lot of this is still a wait and see if we get the funding. However, Council did declare we have to bring a report back to Council to declare the Senior Center, the Pond Street building surplus, so we can get rid of that. So I think a decision has been made there that we will no longer keep that building within the county, and there's all kinds of ideas floating around, but it's Council's decision on is that a expression of interest to the development world where, tell us what you could do there. I don't know what site conditions are, but anyway, so that building is there. Obviously, with the rec center being an interim home for the seniors, that's again, we haven't did a lot on that because we're gonna have the seniors in there for a while, and in the pool as well until we hear of anything, and obviously on the arenas with RFP for operation and stuff, we haven't got too far down there. But the senior center, I think we can cross off that it's not going to be a building within Norfolk County's operational thing anymore, and that's one that we will deem excess and get rid of. So senior center, yes, and the other ones are, I think we still need to wait till the funding comes in and different ideas are kicked around here at these meetings.
Can you offer a little more insight into how the seniors are moving, when they're moving, or what kind of square footage they're moving into?
We've only had one meeting with the seniors, and it was very positive. So what we're looking at is upstairs in the rec center. We have three meeting rooms: the lounge, the Norfolk room, and the Dogwood room. So what the thought is a combination of those rooms and the viewing area, and then when the ice does go out of the rec center, we're looking at, we have to be very cautious because the fair board, we have an agreement with them that they get to use that for the 14 days a year with their fair. So we're looking at some options how we can utilize space in and around the rink for the seniors, and then also once the ice is out, I mean, we could put in a temporary walking track. We could expand things like pickleball and programming. There's lots of things that we can do on that surface. So it's not just exactly all senior space. It's something they can have it in the daytime. It's actually kind of going back to the hub idea where the seniors would have their own autonomy in their own buildings, and then they would leave, and we could rent the rooms out to other people. So that's what we're looking to at nighttime with additional programming, things like that. So. And with that said, everything right now is low dollar, low key, because we're not sure. If the funding comes in, then we know we are only a 5-year home for the seniors. And if we don't get the funding, you know, that could be a 6 to 10 year home. As far as moving, probably won't see a lot of work there until after the fair is done. We really don't want to cram the fair. We need to look at their operations, and also the seniors, by year end, we'd like to have them in the rec center. I don't think we want to go any longer than that.
Okay, that's good information to have at this point. We'll have to sit and digest that. Any comments? Any further information to pass on that? Okay. Well, the next item on the agenda is the adjournment. Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? JJ, seconded by Ian. Discussion? All in favor? Ayes, carry it. The next meeting is Monday, April 6th. We'll see you there.